Hello and welcome back to part 4 of this tutorial series I'm doing on how to model a human head in Blender. And in this part, we're going to model the eyeball, and it's going to be semi-realistic, so this should be nice. Okay, so before I begin, I'd just like to apologize. In the last tutorial series, I didn't have the lips in there. It doesn't really matter, but it might have confused some of you or something. I don't know, I just like to put that out there that I am aware that that happened. Okay, so let's model our eyeball in a whole new layer. Go to layer 3. So to do that, what we're going to do is add in a sphere, and on the sphere, it's going to be transparent right here, and then we're going to model the actual lens of the iris that can then easily be textured, and it should be pretty good. So this is a method that I saw online. It was a college professor actually that was doing eye modeling based on realistic anatomy. So let's do this. We can get rid of our reference images for now. So let's just and uncheck those. Yeah. Shift A, add in a UV sphere, and we're going to rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees. And that's really all we have to do for that. We can actually, yeah, let's do that. Select, go on the side view, box select these vertices, and make sure orthographic view, or not orthographic, proportional editing is on, and drag out the bulge of the eye. His eyes do have a little bulge to them. Drag that out, and that should be fine. Okay, so next we're going to make the material for this eye, so why don't we just add a new material. We'll call this eyeball, if I can spell. And before we add the texture, which will be what's going to make everything transparent, we have to do a few things. We're going to make the specular Wardizo, or however you pronounce that. And that just makes it so that it's pretty sharp. It's a sharp, shiny looking wet specular value. Anyways, we're going to also make the transparency 0 because we want our texture to influence the transparency. So let's go ahead and add that texture. We're going to call this eye blend, doesn't really matter, and make the type blend and the progression quadratic sphere. And if you look at both, you can see nothing has happened so far. We need to make the influence, make it check alpha so that it influences the alpha, and we're going to enable color ramp, and we're just going to drag these out so that they are flipped. And you can see that our sphere just popped back up. And so now if we move this like that, and then adjust a few settings on the mapping, we have to, I just know these settings from experimentation, make this one Z, and that one X, and then this one none, and that will make it so that it's transparent right up top. So why don't we go and adjust that. We'll have to go back later and adjust that. But why don't we make this one white, but then add in another ramp and move it to the end, make it full color and full alpha, and make it just a bit red. So that will give us the illusion of the redness of the eyeball in the back. But it's a little too red close to the eyes, so why don't we add in another ramp, make sure the alpha is 1, and make this one a little bit whiter so that it's not so red, so close to the front of the eye, because this guy doesn't have pink eye or anything. Okay, so why don't we add in a lamp, and see what it looks like in our camera. Okay, why don't we just press F12 and render this, and ooh, looks like the alignment is off. Interesting. Let's see. Let me pause this and figure this out. Okay, so it was just a mix-up of the mapping coordinates like I expected. You have to change the mapping from Z to X to X and Y, and that will make it so that when you render it, it is lined up like that. So that will fix that problem. Let's go ahead and smooth this also so that it is a smooth eyeball. That's fine. And let's make this redness on the ramp. Let's make it last not as long. And let's make it so that we can see it from the front. Okay, that's fine. Okay, and that should be good for that. Yeah, we don't need a bump map or anything. Maybe if we, no. Okay, so next we're gonna make the iris. So why don't we just click off this, Shift A, add mesh torus, and you can make the amount of vertices, scroll up, major segments like 16, minor segments 8 maybe. That's good. Okay, now rotate it and have an edit mode and scale it on the y-axis, and select this inner loop, and with proportional editing on, you can press O to turn it on. Scale this down, and that's good. And now from this, press O to turn off proportional editing, E to extrude it inward, and scale it up. E to extrude again, scale it down, extrude one more time, and W merge at center. So this is going to be the inside of the pupil. It's going to be the iris. And the reason I didn't make this a separate object is because, right, what we can do now is we can set, oh, you can't select that edge. We can set a blend shape if we wanted to for animation. We can animate the opening and closing of the iris, which is nice. But it's not working as I had it working before. Okay, well that's fine as it is. Let's press Shade Smooth, and why don't we just drag this one out and scale it up to better define the edge of it. Control R, add a new one, and drag it in. Scale it. Press S and then Shift Y to ignore the y-axis when you're scaling in. That'll make it easier for us right now. Okay, so now we have to go into the UV mapping panel, go to UV editing, and we're going to tab into edit mode with everything selected. Press 1 and 5 to go into front view and orthographic mode, and press U, project from view. Okay, so we want to just have this circular image. Next, we're going to open up an image that we're going to download. So let's go to Google and let's look up eye texture. And I've seen a couple good ones. What you want is one that doesn't have specularity on it, because that specularity is going to be part of the texture, and then you won't be able to get your own individual specularity on it later. So we're going to choose one that is just flat like this. This is a good one. It's also pretty high res, so we're going to save that image and we're going to map that on. So go to Image, Open, and I'm going to open up my textures, and it's this texture. Okay, so it rescales everything for some reason when you open up an image, so why don't we just do U, project from view one more time to get it back to the way it was. And you can press Control Z to see what it's looking like right now, and it's looking pretty good. Yeah, it's looking all right. We're getting some overlap of the iris, which we don't want. So, or overlap of our pupil getting into the iris area, so we don't want that. So let's select these vertices inside of the UV editing panel and scale them up so that they are not above our. So then you get that horrible scaling. So you just gotta mess with it. until you get it so that on here it's not looking so bad. Maybe that is the only way to have it. Let's undo that. Yeah, that just made it look pretty bad. Okay, so I guess we can just leave that as it is. So something we're going to do is go back to default, and let's add in a new material for all of this. Add a new material, we'll call this iris. And then add a whole nother one. We'll call this one pupil. And in edit mode, select all of these vertices in the back, which is our pupil. It's kind of area that's going to be shadeless. So gotta select each of these edges. Let's go to edge select mode. Select all these edges since it's not registering as an edge loop, or actually select these faces, that will be better. And we're going to get this a new material, but before we do that, press N and go to display, mesh display, display normals on the faces, and you'll see that our normals right now on our pupil are facing out. But we actually want our texture to be on the inside of this. So with these vertices selected, we're going to go to over here, normals, flip direction. So we want to flip the direction of the normals inside the pupil so that when we assign it this pupil texture, we'll make it pure black and shadeless. When we assign it, it will render correctly. It will render pure black inside of there, which is what a pupil does. And now on our iris texture, why don't we make the specularity of Wardloso, the specular type that's so hard to pronounce, and go to texture, add a new texture, make it image or movie, and choose the iris texture that we already made. Make the coordinates UV, and the normal, make it influence the normal just a little bit. That way we'll get a little bit of bumping on our final iris. And now we have to position it so that it's inside of our main eyeball. We have to position it in a way that it's not going through the mesh, but it's as close to the mesh as possible, so that if you're looking at it from a strange angle, you're not going to see the inside of the eyeball, which would be shadeless, and it would look strange that there is just a shadeless portion of your eyeball when it should not be that way. So we have to get it as close as we can without going through the mesh. So like that. That's good. Now with your iris selected, shift right click your eyeball and do Control P, parent it to the object so that when we rotate our eyeball, our iris moves with it. So let's look at what that looks like now. Go to world and enable environment lighting and ambient occlusion. And let's press F12 to render this. And you can see that it looks pretty bad. Let's go to the eyeball. I think the ambient occlusion or something is making it way too white. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Set the ambient occlusion to multiply. And something we have to do is duplicate this light, duplicate it, and make this one a area light. Point it, rotate it so that it is pointed towards our eyeball. Make the area shape something like point or whatever size is big enough. There we go. Turn down the distance so it's not glaring. And we have to make sure no shadow is selected, because right now a shadow is being casted on our iris and there's no way to turn that off. You can't even click don't receive shadows, or on the eyeball don't cast shadows. It's not working. I've experimented and maybe somebody can give me a solution to that, but right now you need a light to light your inside of the eyeball that does not cast a shadow. So if we press F12 now, you'll see that we have our iris, but it's not looking the best right now. So let's go and adjust these settings on our eyeball texture. It seems like we're gonna have to make it a little bigger. I'm just gonna keep experimenting with this. And why don't we just turn off ambient occlusion because it's not, and environment lighting, okay. Okay, it could be this area light that is giving us that glare. It probably is. Yeah, it is. Okay. So you could see in the final render that we have some intersection. So we need to get rid of that. Yeah, it's intersecting when you select it. So scale it down just a little bit. Another thing we can do to make our iris look better is go to the material and make it emit a little bit. So make the shading, make the emit under shading 1. And that will make it kind of glow a little bit. And I think that makes it look pretty good. And obviously we could map a texture to the back of our eyeball for the veins and stuff, but personally I don't waste time doing that because the viewer is hardly ever going to see the back of the eyeball unless you're actually modeling a photorealistic eyeball. But this is just a basic eyeball that will be as realistic as we can make it, but it doesn't need to be photorealistic or anything like that. So I'm going back on the eyeball texture under the blend properties, and I'm making this white one right here a little bit less red than it was before, and this red texture a little bit more red. So if you look at it, it looks like that. That's pretty good. If we enable environment lighting, now that we know that that wasn't, yeah, it does cause us a problem. Okay, ambient occlusion, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so that's cool. You can see that we have a reflection off of the iris and on the eyeball too in a couple of places, so that's cool. And we are getting some specularity over our pupils, so let's figure out how we can get rid of that. If we have this influence the specularity and set the specularity on here to 0, it will not have specularity over the pupil. So if we press F12, oh no, oh yeah, okay, so that's because we have it set over. Okay, so there's nothing we can do about that, I guess. Okay, uncheck specular. Okay, so that's how we're gonna make the eyeball. Let's just go back and press Alt-R on our sphere and RX 90 just to get it facing forward again. Move it to layer 1, and also move our iris to layer 1, M1. And let's position these now to where this is. So Shift S, cursor to selected, Shift S, selection to cursor, and go into side view. And why don't we scale it down until it's the same size as the eyeball. Okay, it's intersecting. That's perfect. That's what we need. Okay, and now that our eyeball has a bulge, it's going to intersect our eye at times, but let me just delete the original eye. It's going to intersect the eye, the eyelid. So the only reason, or the only way to make this completely realistic would be to have the eyelid deform to the area, to the mesh on the eye, but that's not possible. So what we're gonna have to do is go back on the eye and edit this mesh, just bring it forward a little bit, just so that when we rotate this, it's not intersecting anywhere. So you can see it's intersecting there. I would really like to see a good tutorial on how to make the eyelids deform to the mesh of the eye, the eyeball. If anybody in the comments could point me to a tutorial that shows you how to do that, that would be awesome, because I would really like to learn that method. I believe it has something to do with a shrink wrap or something. But yeah, just help a guy out and point me to that tutorial if you know of one. It's a very specific thing. That's why there's probably not many tutorials on it. I am just moving this geometry around so that it's not intersected by the eye when we move it, if you're wondering what I'm doing. But I'm sure by now, guys kind of figured out that I don't talk much when I model. There's one reason I don't do many modeling tutorials. It's mostly because I don't know what to talk about when I model. It's like, okay, I'm not going to tell you every single move I make, so yeah. Okay, so you can see here that we have our mesh, and when we rotate it, it's not intersecting. But something we need to do is make it so that there's not space between our eyeball and our eyelid. So to do that, what we can do is select this inner ring, E to extrude it inward just a little bit. You could scale it on the x-axis a tiny bit, maybe on the z-axis too, and move it back so that it actually goes through the eyeball. So that now it's like that. And we're getting some intersection right there, so why don't we move that out a little bit. So that's just a simple way to make it so that the eyeball fits like that. Again, I'd love to have it so that this mesh shrinks. It like attaches itself basically to the eyeball, but haven't found a good tutorial on how to do that, and I haven't figured it out myself, so we'll just have to go with this for now. Okay, so thank you for watching this part of my tutorial series, and in the next part we'll start to make some more of the broader details, and then we'll go into filling up our holes that we have, and then finally just adjusting it to look like an actual face. So thank you for watching, and hope you enjoyed.